The Bob Murphy Show, episode 377.
There's a tidal wave coming. What you gonna do?
Get ready for another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. It's your source for commentary and interviews, conducted by a Christian and economist. Now here's your host, Bob Murphy.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bob Murphy Show. I am doing another crossover. By the way, let me just remind you folks, some people were asking. So Adam and I are doing a weekly crossover. So he has his show, Heyman Nature, and he does these episodes where he releases it over there, and I release them here. So some people have asked me, when are you going to make him a co-host? And that's not how it works. That's not what we're doing here. It's collaboration. So anyway, he's back again. This week, we're talking about the LA fires and all the related issues. Especially if you've just been a casual peruser of the commentary on this, I think we draw together a bunch of news items and factoids as well as some clips that will enlighten and perhaps shock you. So without further build up, here's my discussion with Adam on the LA fires.
Hello, Bob Murphy.
Hello, Adam Heyman.
So the thing about fire is it's bad.
Yeah.
It's a bad thing. Frankenstein's monster was right.
So we thought, folks, the obvious topic that is unavoidable right now, there's either that or the biopic of Robbie Williams about the monkey thing. And I just realized that the last 5 of my tweets have been about that, so I think I need to move on. And so, yes, let's talk about the fires in L.A. We're just going to, for this one, folks, I think Adam and I are going to be mostly just synthesizing and bringing together stuff that we've seen in our research on this, just to save you time and present it all in one comprehensive place and offer some commentary as well. So you had written something specifically on the fire insurance angle. Do you want to kick things off with that?
Yeah, I'll give some of the broad brush, because I heard that so many people didn't have insurance at all or were underinsured. And I also heard that, like, I think just a couple of weeks before, State Farm and Allstate and a couple other big insurers had just said they're going to pull out of the California market altogether. And that just shocked the heck out of me.
Yeah, I think some of the basic, like, so it was either State Farm or Allstate in like mid 2023 stopped accepting new policies.
Right.
And then, yeah, all through 2024, like many thousands of policies were dropped. And then some as recently as like 6 weeks ago, I was seeing that there were cases of, some homeowner got their drop 6 weeks ago. So, yeah. So it's greed, right? I mean, I don't know what else could it be.
It's always greed. I mean, this darn greed just keeps popping up. No, I mean, if it's going to be California and there's going to be some hideous government regulation that's at the source of it. So I looked, and I think the one that's most relevant was a ballot measure passed, Proposition 103 in 1988, passed with a very slim 51% majority, and it created an insurance department that capped the rate increases by insurers in the area. You had to literally go to this department and make a proposal as to why you think you should increase your rates, and then a bureaucracy will decide. And the process even allows a citizen advocacy group to come in and say, these insurers are all wet. They can offer fire insurance for lower premiums. That's just their greed talking. So, it all bubbled to the head to the point where, people know that the fires have been bad in LA for the last several years. And while the left screams climate change, people that are a little either on the right or a little more sensible or paying attention to the details notice that California is famously not managing their forests or wildlands for fire prevention. They're thinking that anything wild and tangled and dry and is beautiful, rather than creating the man-made fire breaks that a responsible community would create. So I think these insurers are just up a tree based on their projections of the costs of building and the likelihood of fire. They have to raise their premiums, and if the government won't allow them, then they're gonna stop offering policies, right? And then just
to buttress that, the stuff I had seen, just to piggyback on what you're saying there, Adam, was the specific regulation. I believe it was something like, the insurers looking at, hey, there should be fire breaks here. There's too much dry tinder building up here. We got to remove this. And, they weren't doing it. And so eventually they said, this is going to be bad. If you want us to continue offer policies, we're going to have to raise premiums to such and such. And then, the review board looked at like the historical claim data and said, what are you talking about? Looking at historical, experience, the premiums you want to charge are way higher than you need based on, and the insurers were saying, right, because we think it's going to be worse going forward. So it's an interesting interplay there. And they said, no, you can't raise rates. And so I said, all right, well, then we're not going to get policies.
Yeah, they had two huge problems. They couldn't get reinsurance at rates that were affordable because any other reinsurer is going to look at the situation and go, yeah, fire is a huge problem here. And then the state has this thing called the FAIR plan. Stands for Fair Access to Insurance Requirement. You go onto a government website or a quasi-government website and you sign up for this thing and you get, this is for when you can't get
how could
regular
there be an issue if they have something with that name?
I mean, it's right in the name, right?
Sure.
And they built it into an acronym, so it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can say the private insurance company looks at your house and says, no, we can't write you a policy. The government won't let us charge the right rate, so I'm sorry. So you go to this website for the FAIR plan and you sign up, and it's famous for being super high premiums and super limited coverage. But here's the worst thing. It's not even a government program funded by taxpayers, which of course I would object to. But no, it's any insurer. The whole reason I looked into this thing is it's not that the insurance companies were saying we're going to stop issuing policies to specific homeowners in areas that we think are susceptible to fire damage. They're saying, no, we're going to pull out of California altogether. I'm like, why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason is this FAIR Act isn't a government pool of money. It's funded by the threat of force by any insurer that remains doing business in the state. And it's not fully funded. So, I mean, this thing is woefully underfunded. I don't know if there's a mechanism in it by which they can claw out more money from the insurance companies that's already in it. But it is a whole Byzantine spider's web, viper nest, pick your metaphor, for government regulation, just making a thing, just making it a tragic train wreck. What's going to happen to these homeowners trying to rebuild and recover? Where's the money going to come from?
That's interesting because, like, I know with flooding, the standard free market economist objection is that when the federal government comes in, or maybe it's the state level too, and subsidizes like homes that are built on the East Coast in areas prone to flooding, and people build these nice houses and whatever right on the beach, and then they get hit by a hurricane, and then oh wow, there's all this property damage. It's like, well, yeah, because you keep building all these resort homes, right? And private insurance wouldn't cover it. And so there, the issue is, you're subsidizing it. And here it's the flip side. They say, oh no, this isn't tax dollars. We're not subsidizing all these famous actors and their homes next to a tinderbox. We're just saying, no, make the fire insurance companies pay for it. And then the obvious result of that is they say, okay, well then we'll leave the state. That the state government of California can't take our money if we're not in the state, because there still is some, jurisdiction areas or issues. And so it's just, I got another illustration of, Mises' demonstration that one intervention doesn't have the consequences they want. So then what do? They don't say, oh, we should back off and have laissez-faire. Or we'll do another intervention and we'll do another one and so forth.
Every single time I see that dynamic at play, I'm reminded of the old lady who swallowed a spider. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. It's this never-ending series of misadventures with government regulations requiring the next one. And it's not like you had to be, some sort of a brilliant climate analyst or study actuarial tables or be a brilliant insurance company to know that that Southern California was a disaster waiting to happen. All you had to do, it turns out, is be Joe Rogan. It's been a famous clip of something he said a little while back on his show, and let's just play the clip and listen to it.
I talked to a fireman once. This is one of the reasons it freaked me out. And he was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a fucking thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it. Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do.
So there you go. I mean, it's if you got cancer, you can watch Rogan. If you have COVID, you watch Rogan, and if you have
it's
LA,
pretty chilling.
Yeah, fire safety, you watch Rogan.
It's pretty chilling to hear him talk about that. And I think that, probably was a big part of the reason he left Los Angeles. There's other reasons too, COVID and taxes and everything else. But I mean, if you got a high up fire official telling you that, yeah, it's just a matter of luck that any forest fire hadn't been paired with these super high winds and just flooded through residential neighborhoods. And, we're going to bring up some other issues about DEI and whatnot, but I don't think any fire service in the country could have stopped these fires with those winds. Fire plus wind, as they learned in Maui, to devastating effect is just lethal.
Yeah, and this maybe is a good time to discuss the linking to climate change. So there was a meme going around from Comrade Cisco. I'm sure Comrade doesn't mean anything political. Yeah, it's the Pirates of the Caribbean thing with the top frame says, "You best start believing in climate change," and it's like the human, pirate, and then the bottoms he turns into like the monster. He says, "Because the company insuring your home does." And so my problem with that is it's just this classic thing where the phrase climate change, it's a standard Mott and Bailey. And for people who don't know that term, it's become, fashionable to use it, and I've latched onto it because it's such a great concept of there's like the bigger area that's not as defensible, and then there's the stronger fortress that's way more defensible. And so classic way you see this used is the term feminism. And so people will say, in a marriage, anytime the husband has sex with the wife, it's really rape, if you think about it. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? You crazy? You crazy? And they say, that's feminism. And they say, oh, no, feminism is just the idea that women have rights. And it's that kind of thing where they'll make a crazy outlandish claim, and then people go nuts, and then they'll back up when you challenge them and just say, all we mean by that is, and so likewise here, that thing, when that meme is saying you best believe in climate change, I don't think even Donald Trump would deny that global temperatures right now are different from when they were when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? So everyone concedes the climate changes. No one denies climate change. What they mean by that, of course, is why hasn't the U.S. government and other governments around the world gotten more serious about grossly restricting carbon dioxide emissions from human activities? That's what they mean. They don't mean, do you believe in climate change? They mean, do you believe in this specific set of policy measures? Okay, and so again, we don't know that the insurance companies believe in that. What we know is the insurance companies thought the risk of fire damage in 2022 to the present was a lot higher than it had been 10 years earlier. And that's why we would need to charge higher premiums. All right? From their behavior, we can't back out. Geez, do the actuaries of the fire insurance companies think that a global carbon tax would have been a good idea? Or do they believe in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and think the cost would outweigh the benefits would outweigh the cost? So we have no idea about that. So again, this is just, so anyway, that's my comment on that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I just find it hard to believe that someone on social media would use a recent tragedy to try and buttress some sort of a political claim.
Yeah.
So I'm mortified.
So in any event, my point being, folks, is that, right, what we can observe from this is that the insurance companies knew there was much more likely to be fire damage for which, they would be on the hook contractually this year than 10 years ago.
Okay, but that's really what we know. And again, as Rogan, but nobody is denying that. That's not a shocking revelation. It's not that right wingers for years have been denying that. I mean, Rogan was talking about, as Adam just played.
I want to focus on another particular aspect of this government regulation that just just knocked my socks off. I said they have to petition this Department of Insurance, whatever it was called, something horrible, in order to be able to get permission to raise their premiums. And one of the arguments they literally were just not allowed to make, it's like a judge, throwing evidence out of a trial or something. One of the things the insurance companies could not do is project into the future what they think costs are going to be due to any kind of change, increasing costs to rebuild houses or wildfire management or climate change or anything. No matter, it was some weird thing that you literally could not. You could use actuarial tables, look at the past, but they couldn't allow evidence or arguments saying going forward we think costs are going to be X, Y, and Z. Therefore, we need to raise our premiums. The department would just say, "Oh no, you can't talk. You can't talk about the future. What are you doing here?"
Okay, yeah, so that dovetails with the stories I had read. So I'm glad it kind of confirms that, and you can see why they would say that, right, from their perspective. They're like, oh no, you're just a greedy insurance company. You're just making stuff up.
Yeah, I get the argument.
Claims like that, and so whereas no, we're going to limit it to the hard facts and what how much were your claims over the last 5 years and moving average and blah blah blah. So it is just interesting. And again, it comes down to when you start regulating this stuff, that's the problem you're going to get into. Like if they're going to give a local monopoly on electricity service, that's why they do the cost plus pricing model.
Right.
If you outlaw competition, I'm not saying here there was outlaw competition, but I was saying I get why these regulators think like that because, if there's a captive market, I mean, people could just charge anything they want.
Yeah, and all these people are left without fire insurance or something terrible that they thought would be great because it's called FAIR. Because this government agency thought that it could, on the margin really set what the price for insurance is supposed to be. It's everything wrong with socialism. Cue your Hayek quote or your Mises quote. Instead of the interplay of a bunch of suppliers and a bunch of consumers wrangling for an array of insurance products at varying prices for various levels of coverage. Instead, you just get one bureaucratic agency saying this high a premium and no higher, and cue the disaster.
Now, there's been a lot of other complaints people have levied against this, so why don't we run through them? So the big one that people have said is the DEI stuff. And so here, I didn't want to make too much of it because whenever there's a problem, my original tweet on this was, hey, guess what, folks? Turns out the fires in LA confirmed everybody's political views from last week. Everyone, oh yeah, it's climate change. I'm telling you. And others say, yeah, stupid DEI stuff and these lesbians. And so, but here on the DEI stuff, they're not cherry picking. And they really did make a big deal of that stuff. So I don't know in the grand scheme, is it that, we see footage here of, a bunch of female firefighters, they dropped the hose out of exhaustion and then the home burned down because they couldn't, I can't say whether in the grand scheme that matters. To me, though, it's at least a matter of opportunity costs that, as we're going to document here, folks, we're going to go through clearly, besides just, hey, it's a freak thing and, there's fire and there's heat and winds. What are you going to do? There was tons of things that they were asleep at the wheel. And so at the very least, you can say this focus on DEI distracted them from these other possible things. So just to give some evidence backing that up. So here, these clips come from John Popola did a take on this. Then so he got some footage and we're just using that. So we'll link to him in the show notes, folks. But so here is the local news team back in 2022 when the first woman who's also part of the LGBTQ got appointed and how important it was. So just a clip, short little clip here.
Welcome back to CBS Saturday Morning. The city of Los Angeles swore in a new fire chief yesterday, and for the first time in history of the department, she is a woman.
Amazing. The most amazing thing ever. Can you believe it?
Kristen Crowley will lead the nation's third largest firefighting force in our second biggest city as a push for diversity continues in a male-dominated field. And this is huge for diversity. She's not only the first woman, also the first LGBTQ person to take this position.
Okay, so again, not to make a big deal on, but the point is, it's not that she happened to be a lesbian and now the right wing's biting. No, the left made a huge deal of it at the time, and so now when stuff blows up in their face, that's certainly something you can bring up. And then also just to show, like, oh, come on, that was just a one-off, thing, like a milestone. It's not like it affected their day-to-day. Yeah, it did. So here, Christopher Rufo, of course, we'll link to this, folks, on January 9th, had this tweet, and he says, the LA Fire Department's strategic plan made DEI and a progressive work environment two of their top three priorities, regarding them as more important than, quote, technological innovations and disaster recovery capabilities, which it ranked last. So specifically, it's from this, Kristen Crowley, fire chief's memo or something she put out, and she says, our 7 key goals will focus on the following. So in fairness, number 1 is deliver exceptional public safety and emergency services. Okay, so they did say that is number 1. But number 2 is promote a safe, healthy, and progressive work environment that effectively manages personal and organizational risk. 3 is commit to an organization that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, and then down number 7 is enhance community resilience, disaster recovery capabilities, and environmental sustainability. Okay, so that's what Rufo meant when he said that, they put that leg in. And so number 3 is literally the DEI stuff. And then there's also, he has a thing here of a whole page of the DEI strategies and all the like bullet points in 3.1.1 and 3.1.2 and did it in like listing all the ways that they're going to, including create an equity and human resources bureau to provide leadership, guidance, and resources to advance the department's DEI vision. Okay, so I'm just saying that because that phrase, the terminology DEI gets thrown around so much. I almost want to make sure people realize that's a real thing. It's not like the right wing made that up or something. And then to give, so this is funny. Here's I'm just going through some things, Adam. So this is from January 19 of 2023 from the LA Times. So this author is a left-winger who's defending the city from accusations. And so the title of this piece is, have no Prop 1 water projects been built in California? No, but they're moving slowly. And so let me just read the first couple paragraphs. California voters, so again, this is from January of 2023. California voters approved a ballyhooed $7.5 billion bond issue 8+ years ago, thinking the state would build dams and other vital water facilities. But it hasn't built zilch. True or false? That's the rap. The voters were taken. The state can't get its act together. Republicans and agriculture interests in particular make that charge, but the complaint is also widespread throughout the state. Okay, so this guy is summarizing the climate back in January of 2023, saying there's a lot of Republicans who are mad that, hey, 7 or 8 years ago, we approved a $7.5 billion bond issuance to bolster our water supplies, and they haven't done that. And this guy's saying, well, okay, yeah. And he said, there's some truth in the allegation, but it's basically a bum rap. No dams have been built, that's true. But 1 will be, and 2 will be expanded. And hundreds of... So it's 8+ years after the thing was passed, and he's admitting, so far, yeah, sure, nothing has been done, but they are going to do something.
It makes you wonder...
defense.
It makes you wonder how many years would have to go by before it was a bum.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bum rap.
And then another quick one. I just got 2 more. And another from March of 2022. Again, in the grand scheme to this matter, I don't know, but LA County Fire Department donating surplus supplies to Ukraine's first responders, right? And so they gave them various of their excess material. And then this guy, Austin Jeffs from the Free Press, this is from January 2025. Like, this is very recent, like, after the fires are burning down all the neighborhood. And the title is, Why is the Santa Ynez Reservoir Empty? The Palisades fire has, at the time of writing, burned over 22,000 acres, thousands of structures, blah, blah, blah. It broke out on January 7th, and by Wednesday, 3 a.m. the next day, the firefighters were essentially out of water to fight it. Why? Well, there's the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which holds 117 million gallons, and it's the water supply for the Pacific Palisades. But it has been empty since February of last year.
Jesus.
And it says when officials say it was drained to allow repairs to a torn cover that prevents evaporation. Austin, the reporter, saw no construction materials or vehicles around the reservoir on Friday. Meaning if the reason it's been empty is because they were repairing it, where are the repair vehicles, right? Firefighters told him that there was no communication from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to the LA Fire Department about any water supply issues. No one informed them that the reservoir was empty when they began fighting the Palisades fire. Instead, the LAFD had to use water supply from 3 backup tanks, each holding about 1 million gallons. They blew through it in less than a day. Why was the reservoir allowed to stay empty for nearly a year? When it became clear that the Santa Ana winds would coincide with this remarkably dry rainy season, why didn't the DWP start refilling it? And so then, but here, we do have a comment here, Adam, from the guy in charge. Governor Newsom has ordered an independent investigation, while the DWP general manager, Martin Adams, said that the Santa Ynez Reservoir being filled with its 117 million gallons of water would have, quote, helped, but not, quote, saved the day. So he is conceding that, sure, if this thing that was supposed to be the source of their water supply, we didn't even tell the fire department that this has been empty since February. Had that been full of 117 gallons, maybe it would have helped, but, I don't know that it would have saved the day. So there you have it. So again, it's when you see people complaining about mismanagement and incompetence and whatever, this is the kind of stuff they mean.
Yeah, there's a lot of things there. The fact that reservoir was empty for over 10 months goes to show the pernicious awfulness of DEI, because I guarantee that they had great DEI for those entire 10 months, because that's what they're focusing on. They may have provide excellent fire service number 1 on that list of things that they're supposed to do, but you can tell what they're leading with, because being awesome at DEI is what gets them great news coverage on that local news show that we were talking about. It's just a fact of management that you cannot simultaneously put your top attention on multiple goals. And if you're focusing on the DEI of your industry, it has to be the case that you're, as you alluded to with opportunity costs, you're not emphasizing merit in stopping fires in your hiring practices, and you're obviously not, you were focusing on something other than refilling that reservoir and fixing the tarp cover or whatever it was. What were you focusing on as you're being paid these hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? Well, I bet it was something DEI-ish. And it just goes to show, when you focus on something irrelevant, people's houses burn up. But I did want to make one point. I agree with the weasel who said, it wouldn't have saved the day even if this reservoir was full. Based on the chilling effect I got watching that Joe Rogan Experience clip, I do believe that even a competent fire department probably would have been overwhelmed with this particular wildfire. I think winds that strong and multiple sources of burning. I don't know if you looked into that much. It looked like arson in a bunch of spots. But I think even a competent state fire department would have been overwhelmed. But the DEI just made it an immediate collapse. It looked like.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's hard to say, because another element in this is, here's a news story. Billionaire tycoon is blasted after hiring a private fire crew to protect his luxury outdoor mall as devastating wildfires continue to rip through L.A. And so L.A. residents are furious. A billionaire tycoon spent thousands of dollars on private firefighters to help protect his business, while emergency services struggle to contain the flames. Billionaire developer and former mayoral candidate Rick Caruso is receiving backlash. So the guy who lost running for mayor, he saved his mall. So again, I don't know, I'm not an expert. I don't know the location of his mall, but he hired people. And so he's getting yelled at for, you're using valuable water to save your commercial properties rather than letting, the public use it to save residential homes. So again, it's a coincidence that,
whether he's
more private sector stuff is, the more effective it seems to be.
Yeah, and whether he's guilty or not, it's certainly the fact that when you have resources allocated by political means, you're gonna the politicians are going to direct resources in their favor, on the margin, whether this guy did or not. It's Bob, did you see the no, go ahead.
I just want to make sure. I was being a bit sarcastic. My point is, though, like you were saying, I don't know how effective. I'm saying it does seem to be that, the other side is conceding that, yes, this billionaire hiring private firefighters was able to protect his stuff.
Oh, I see.
His shopping mall didn't get burned down. So I'm just saying that's one data point, but it's, in other words, if he had failed, they probably would have said what you said. Like, see, it doesn't matter what would have happened. It just, if there's fire and wind, nothing you can do. But he was able to say, and so then now the accusation is, oh, well, that's not fair. Why did he get all the water? So.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Before we completely get away from the DEI thing, did you see that viral clip of the official who, let's say, isn't necessarily going to carry you out of a burning building?
I'm not sure.
Let's play that.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
How do you like that, Bob?
I do like it. I also liked, there were some women on Twitter that they were saying something like, people keep saying that I don't care when the firefighters show up what they look like, but no, I want them to look like this. And they were showing like, jacked guys with their shirts off and their six pack and everything. So good one, heterosexual ladies. I'll give you that one. That was funny.
Heterosexual ladies for the win.
Yes. And then there's also, I got so many tabs, folks. I got to keep finding the thing. Where the heck did it go? Okay. So you might say, well, who was in charge of the fire situation or the water situation? There's a water chief, Janice Quinones, and she made a modest $750,000 a year. And insiders are saying that she knew about the empty reservoir and broken hydrants months before fires. That was another thing, too, is apparently, Adam, it's a rampant problem where people were just stealing fire hydrants and, like, selling it for scrap. Like, people would be complaining, and the government, was, oh, okay, yeah, that's people should stop doing that. So that's, let's see. So the $750,000 a year LA water czar is responsible for a raft of failures that contribute to the devastating fire department, insiders told Daily Mail. On Mayor Karen Bass's orders, the city maxed out its budget to, quote, attract private sector talent, hiring Department of Water and Power CEO Janice Quinones on a $750,000 salary starting back in May, which was almost double that of her predecessor. Okay, so, I guess the mayor could say, I don't know what more you want me to do. I double the salary, but and I won't get into the weeds here, but she used to work for PG&E and left, while that company was like settling lawsuits that its sparks had contributed to an earlier round of fires. And, so it's kind of like, well, we hired them. I mean, she knows about fire. She just worked for a company that caused them. So why wouldn't she, so anyway, so it's let me say this, that I want to like try to be fair, because that goes into, so I've seen some people like complaining that they even cut the budget, which apparently is true, that they cut like $17 million or something from the fire department's budget. And so in general, right-wingers don't complain when the government cuts budget. So is this just a case where, no matter what they did, the right-wingers were going to be upset with them? Because like, that's what I'm saying. Like here, you could say, well, no, I mean, they were spending a bunch to get somebody to come in and do this. And yeah, that didn't, I admit there was a problem with the human element here, but I don't think we should judge a whole program based on.
Yeah, but I mean, they're in a tough spot. How could you possibly figure out what the quote unquote right amount of funding they're supposed to receive per year is? There's certainly no market test, right?
Right.
And, since they have no competition, whatever their budget is, they're not going to prioritize allocation. They could have filled that reservoir with water over 10 months. They just didn't.
Right.
It wasn't a money problem. They did not care. They cared about something else.
Well, right. Just to be clear, I'm saying I want, like the point you just made, the generic libertarian point, that no matter what resources they have at their disposal, they're not going to had the same incentives, because it's not like they're going to go out of business and there's going to be a different fire department next year, because they did so poorly. But I guess what I'm saying is, had they raised had they spent a lot more on fire prevention efforts and things, and this happened, the right-winger critics would not have said, well, geez, I'll give them a pass, because, they did spend a lot more. And like with this lady, the fact that she got paid $750,000 is extra reason to be mad at the mayor. Like, you had this thing happen, and you wasted so much hiring this lady to come in. You know what I mean? Whereas at least the mayor's official statement there of, the reason they pay that much is because we want to attract private sector talent. Ostensibly that should be something right wingers would like. So I don't know if you get what the point I'm trying to make at is that obviously no matter what the government does, it's going to be screwed up. But I'm saying I feel like no matter what they had done with the budget, the Republican conservative critics would have pointed at that and said, aha, why did you do that? That was a mistake. Just like here,
yeah.
They're not going to say, well, at least you did pay $750,000 to get somebody in charge of the water. And maybe if you had just spent $1 million to get someone even more qualified next time, they would have filled the reservoir. That's not what they're saying. They're saying you wasted money on that. And then when they cut the budget over here, and why did you cut the budget?
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I'm getting the point you're making, but what I'm hearing
It's a good one.
No, I take that as a given. But what I'm hearing is the internal contradiction from my perspective of right-winger Republicans who think that providing fire protection services is something that the government can, in principle, do effectively if just smart, sensible, maybe private sector people were put in charge. And to that, I say, you're a fool, right-wing Republican. It doesn't matter. It's the incentive structures inherent in the system, the monopoly system. It's not how big the budget was or who was in charge. So,
yeah, are we being too clever? And here, it's folks, we're just riffing now at this point, just because again, we gotta give you value add here. So we're trying to go meta. I'm just with stuff like this. I wonder though, are we being too cute? Like, sure, guys, socialism doesn't work. You need market incentives and whatever. But if the reservoir is bone dry, and everyone's telling you there's a real chance of fire, maybe make sure that gets filled, or tell the fire department, by the way, your chief water supply is empty. Like, that's something that, and assuming that they're not just covering their butt, maybe they did know that and they're just lying, who knows, but
that's a good point. I'm not suggesting that you couldn't improve this crappy fire department by getting rid of this ridiculous focus on DEI. I'm just saying that whatever incremental improvements you can make, it would pale in comparison to a free market in fire protection services.
Maybe if I could make an analogy, it was ironic because Brian Kaplan one time had a thing where he was saying, if you, based on some of our rhetoric as libertarian anarcho-capitalists, you'd think that the government couldn't do anything right. But the drinking water is pretty good in the United States. And then the Flint thing happened. And so that was kind of ironic. But on the other hand, it's like, the Flint thing, we can say that's government for you, but it's like, how hard is it to fix the water after years? You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing that it happens, and it's a good case study to show, nope, see, they really don't care. And if there's a bureaucracy in place and they don't care, and it'll take years to sort. But on the other hand, you can see like, a limited government constitutional conservative type saying, guys, give me a break. If you just had normal people running that, they know how to give drinkable water to people. This is just a bunch of idiots, and put some people in there and know what they're doing.
It's hard to see when the counterfactual is crowded out so effectively. Like, the government does take a whole bunch of our money, and it does give us something that it calls roads. And we're pretty sure that could be done in a better manner if it was private, or even if you just had better management. But it is hard to, we get something for our money. It's just terrible. Yeah. We do get military protection for our huge, taxpayer dollars. It just comes with blowback and foreign intervention and all sorts of other horrible things. But yeah, we do have tanks.
So I guess, is it worth? I suppose in terms of the free market. Oh, what's your guys' alternative? I think you just have alluded to it, and we've been hinting at it, that at the very least, if somebody royally screws up, they go out of business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if there are economies of scale and, it would just be one company that would dominate, okay. And when they have a royal screw up like this, they go out of business at least, and there's some limit to it. Whereas if we've seen, it's not like Governor Newsom might not be president now. And so I suppose that's a thing.
Yeah, let me throw a dart at it just to get things started. Just right off the bat, if there was a complete free market in insurance in California, it's not just that the rates would be allowed to rise to reflect the actual risk of fire. There would be incentive from both the insurer and the customer to do things to mitigate that risk, to lower the premiums that they have to pay. You see this in all other types of insurance, and there's no reason why that couldn't be implemented in Southern California, except that the government has crowded out one of the biggest variables, which is provision of where the water comes from. That's a socialized good, and how you control these forests and the wildlands where the fire really gains steam before it hits a neighborhood.
Yeah, so great points, and that brings an economic calculation. So yes, if those had been more market provided goods, the price signals would have been there.
Right.
And so it would have been more obvious if what the true cost was of like saying, oh no, you if the trees fall down, you got to just leave them there because it's nature. You can't clear the brush.
Right.
And to say, well, then that means all states charging me $600,000 more, and no, the lush environmental pristine beauty of the forest undisturbed. I don't want that. I want to clear that out to be able to. So whereas now having to have the premium hikes approved by the commission or whatever, that does somewhat insulate people from realizing just how costly their environmental, green legislation is. And the same thing with the water, the reservoir, like if that had been a private business and they had known, in the event that movie stars' homes are about to get burned down, you know how much we could sell water for? And if we had 117 million gallons
Right.
that we were allowed to quote, charge gouging prices for, that would be pretty lucrative. So let's make sure we're not caught empty-handed when water is the most valuable commodity in this region. Like we want to have a bunch of that. It's not that beer companies all of a sudden in the middle of August are, oh shoot, we're out of beer. That doesn't happen.
No, it'll never happen. There's another aspect of resource allocation in free markets that's useful to point out. If prices are functioning effectively, you'll be able to find out if you're doing something like building a house in an unsustainable place in the first place, right? Like maybe where you're building is just so prone to fire that it doesn't make sense to build there. Just like, without being able to get flood insurance, you probably shouldn't build on that rocky peninsula where only a lighthouse should exist because it's going to get flooded. These socialized programs make our species build places that they shouldn't build. It just doesn't make any sense. You have to have somebody else paying for the cost for you to get to build in your beachfront home, and have somebody else subsidize the insurance.
Yes, exactly. And I had, on the gouging thing that I went through there, I just reminded myself, so this Newsom guy, maybe I'm reading too much into it, and John Popola made the same point when in these interviews where he seems pretty glib. Whereas, and I will say, like, I'm not a fan of Rudy Giuliani, but I was at NYU, when 9/11 happened. I mean, not physically. I was living in New Jersey at the time. I saw the second, like I was looking out my window and saw the second tower go down. And Giuliani, there was a brief period for like a 48-hour stretch where he was not a politician. He really was just the guy. And, like at press conferences, they were asking him stuff. And a lot of times he would just say, I don't know. We're working on that. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't hemming and hawing. He was just letting them know, I don't know the answer. It's a good question. I don't know. We're looking at it. And then later, of course, he capitalized on that, as, America's mayor and all that. But I'm saying for that 48-hour, it really looked like he was shocked and like, what do we do? And I got to lead these people and we got to bounce back. And, how do we help everybody? Because, I'm leading this people right now. So anyway, I'm just saying he really did seem like, whereas Newsom, I'm not getting that sense at all. I think he's, and where I'm going with this, folks, is so that he had a tweet that came out recently saying, just issued an executive order that will allow victims of the SoCal fires to not get caught up in bureaucratic red tape and quickly rebuild their homes. We are also extending key price gouging protections to help make rebuilding more affordable. So my point is, he's clearly just posturing there. That red tape, he's been governor since 2019. The red tape that's there is partly, that he was okay with that. Like,
is it here for a reason or isn't it?
So, yeah, right.
Why have red tape?
Yeah, if bureaucratic red tape, then why do you have it? And are you going to put it back when it's to give an analogy? By the way, I'm not saying it would never make sense to do that. Like, for example, a couple days ago, I had my little kids with me, and we were going to a diner, and it was new, and we get in there, and I forgot to bring my hand sanitizer. All right, and I'm a germaphobe, and we started eating, and my 4-year-old says, "How come we're not washing our hands before we eat?" And I went, "Yeah, buddy, it's," and the answer was because he had his little brother with him, and to take them into the bathroom, and I didn't know what the situation was going to be, and it just would have been more hassle. And I had done the calculation and thought, okay, I know when their hands were more recently washed, and I'm going to touch the door handle, and I'll try not to eat with that. So I'm going through all that stuff. But I didn't say, oh, yeah, for this meal, we're going to get rid of that stupid rule about hand washing before, you know what I mean? Like, I acknowledge that, yes, there is a reason for that rule. The situation right now, I'm going to make the judgment call that we're going to put that rule aside for right now, and I think it's okay. So that's my point, that the language use. I'm not saying it's crazy that he had an executive order to suspend those things, and he could say, yes, normally the environmental review process, but here really there's, okay. But to just posture him as bureaucratic red tape, like, give me a break, like he's, Rush Limbaugh or something. Anyway.
I thought his response was terrible and cringy and awful too, and I detected something. I heard everything you're talking about, but he also, Gavin Newsom is an interesting character. I mean, they've been floating him as a possible presidential bid for quite a while now, but this is while the Democratic Party was in the grips of the most identitarian, woke, racist DEI nonsense perversion in its history, where, we've got to go out of our way to hire a female person of color. And if she's gay, that's a plus, So you've got this very charming, articulate, in my view, scaly and weaselly politician, Gavin Newsom, who's like almost the head of his party, but he has to be facing all these identitarian slings and arrows. I mean, he has to be hearing this stuff, at least in the media. And then when he's saying, deflecting attention from, well, this isn't the governor's fault, this is the responsibility of those local officials. Mm-hmm. Every time I heard him say local officials, I mean, there's nothing wrong with those words, but I kept hearing a little misogyny and a little racism every time he said that. Don't blame the straight white guy for this. This is those local officials that are screwing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost felt like he was, getting his digs in. This one wasn't my fault.
Yeah. He's like, hey, at least I'm in the country, right? Like, at least I'm answering the question.
All right. Well, getting into specifics of how a free market would have handled.
Actually, we didn't play that clip yet.
Which one?
I'm just looking at my note. We didn't play the mayor.
Oh, well, then let's do that.
Yeah, let's, in case some people, my joke might have been sound. So folks, in contrast to the slippery Governor Newsom, who at least is there and fields questions and just throws his subordinates under the bus, here's how the mayor handled questions. And she wasn't in the country. She had left to go see, was it the leader of Ghana get inaugurated or something like that? And so here, someone caught her, and we'll just play this clip, and you can see this is the skillful politician at work with her clever riposte.
I hope people get to watch this because it really is amazing. Here we go.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up? I appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
So beforehand, Adam and we both commented that we had heard people alluding to it. How bad could it be? And you watch it, and it's so bad you're almost wondering, Adam, you thought, was the guy just being like piped in, and was she not hearing the audio or something?
I was literally wondering if this was a troll who took a video, stripped out the real audio, and put some English person asking a question that this lady can't even hear. I mean, assuming it's legit, what was she doing?
Yeah,
I just staring into the ground as somebody asks, "How come you're not?" Wow. So there's your mayor. For
in
you.
fairness, maybe she was running through every possible answer, and she, unlike Newsom, realized, no, if I say that, that will be worse. So I'm just going to say...
Like that scene in The Terminator, but then refusing to say the line chosen. Well, the guy knocks on the door and, all right.
So there you have it. And this is, I guess it kind of goes back to Michael Malice's thing about these are not impressive people we're dealing with.
No, they are not. My goodness. I mean, I think we've addressed the reasons we think this was, quite a bit worse than it had to be. Do you want to address the climate change accusations? That this is just so demonstrably proof of that, or?
I mean, it's like I said, the main point I wanted to make was just the fact that insurance companies knew this was going to be a particularly bad season.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, so therefore, because the phrase climate change could mean all sorts of stuff. Also, I did have some people saying in response to our, because as I asked the person who was pushing back on my tweets about that Pirates of the Caribbean meme, and I asked him, I said, well, do you think I deny climate change? And he said, well, I listened to you and Adam on your conspiracy ones, and I don't know. So again, so to be clear, like the climate change can mean lots of things. And so I'm not denying the earth is warmer now in terms of global measured temperatures than it was like in the 1880. But the point is the models that show all the feedback effects then say we better do X, Y, and Z or else bad things are going to happen by the year 2100. There's a couple of things there. So one is they assume a bunch of positive feedbacks that might be true, but is based on hindcasting. And like I said, at least as of the time several years ago when I looked at the models, they were on the verge of being falsified or, being below the 95% confidence interval, which doesn't mean they're crushing it. It means they've almost been falsified. And again, though, the authors presented to the public as saying the models are predicting well within the range of their error confidence intervals or something. You know what I mean? Like it's the way they say it, it makes it sound like, yeah, this is basically what we predicted. And then the other thing though, too, is even on its own terms, like who would have had to do what, right? Like no matter what the state of California did, that's not going to change global CO2 concentration.
Right.
Even the United States acting unilaterally in the grand scheme, with China and India is not. So there's a bunch of things you have to say like, wow, if Trump had just exercised better leadership and not pull out of the Paris Accords and if this and that, and I get it. If there was an asteroid coming towards Earth and Trump said, well, we're not going to do anything about it, I understand why people would be upset and think that was poor leadership. But on the other hand, there's a lot of dominoes that need to fall in order to say the reason these fires broke out is because of climate change.
Yeah, but what if it really buttresses my political ideology and makes me feel good on social media? Doesn't that count for anything? All right, well, this was great. Anything else you want to talk about other than, as we stated at the outset, I think Bob and I both agree, fire, very bad.
What I saw in your piece, and folks, we can link, Adam had written something up on the insurance stuff with the FAIR Act and whatnot. I didn't get the Frankenstein reference. Is that what he says?
He says fire bad, or at least
or I should say Frankenstein's a monster. Who knows what?
Yes, I made that distinction.
The doctor
quite well.
probably agrees fire's bad as well, but
at least when Saturday Night Live makes Phil Hartman be Frankenstein, he says frequently fire bad, hilariously.
Okay.
Yeah. And when the townsfolk are chasing through, the village, chasing Frankenstein's monster with pitchforks and torches, fire's bad.
Yes. Yeah.
Always close on a high note, Dr. Murphy.
Okay.
All right. For those of you watching this or listening on Heyman Nature, please go check out bobmurphyshow.com and also check out Bob's Human Action podcast at Mises.org.
We should just rebrand it to Heyman Action.
I mean, give my empire time to grow. And if the vice versa, please check out heymannature.substack.com and my YouTube show, Heyman Nature. Thank you very much, Bob. This was great. And thank you, folks, for watching.
Bye. Remember, everyone, fire bad.
Fire bad.
You've just experienced another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. For more information and to subscribe to this podcast, visit bobmurphyshow.com.